Yo, what is up? It's JJ from 845, and on this episode of Frame Explain, I'm going actually over an image, rather, I'm going to figure out an image to use for a biopic request. I did apply for this organization called Balay Creative. It's a Filipino organization in San Francisco to basically speak as a masterclass speaker for a program that they do have. And I'll basically be teaching on client acquisition workflow as a creative, right? So how to get new clients as a photographer, as a cinematographer, as an artist. And so it's a topic that I think most people pretty much have their own way of getting clients. But I think there's definitely a more proactive way of doing so. And that is a topic that I'll be discussing when I do give that talk in July. So they did request for a biopic. I have one that I'm using currently on my social, the one with the yellow background that matches my J Casas photography logo, but I figured I'll create a new one. And so I did it at the studio here in San Francisco. Took me about 15 minutes-ish. Yeah, kind of want to go through as far as the whole process of selecting headshots, and then of course, probably finding at least two, and then going over the edit from there. So there's an app that I use called Post Haste, and I strongly recommend it. I can show you as far as when you do create a template. Again, typically when you're done with a photo shoot, usually you have some sort of process. And for me, that is creating a file structure, a file folder structure that made the most sense to me. So I made a few here. For example, if a shoot does photo and video, there's one that's dedicated for photography. There's one for Reels templates. There's one for Reels for Instagram, so a 9x16, and then a general video one. So in this photography one, I went ahead and created folders. So there's a Lightroom, and it's all numerical, so on top and then the bottom. So 00, so Lightroom catalog, my raw file folders. And so I have a bunch of cameras, and these are the ones that I've listed. So 645Z is my main, the medium format, the Leica M9, the Mini, the Magic, the DJI Mini Mavic 2, the Leica Q, Leica SL, and then a Fuji X-E3. So when I create a folder, I delete everything else that I'm not using. And then I have another folder that's edited, and then one for web, if and when I create proofs. So I already created the folder already. So you can see here that it's titled just like what I wrote, JC Photography, Headshot, Self-Portrait. And again, file structure stuff, I try to keep things as consistent as possible. So that way, if you were to search on Finder, you can go ahead and find it easily. Or more beautifully is when you go ahead and expand it, you can just take a look at your files and then you're like, okay, cool. Here's the headshots and then who are the client, and then go from there. So first things first is I already copied all of the images into the raw folder. So again, see, I didn't take that many. The program that I use to just cull through and essentially select the ones that I want to keep is with Photo Mechanic. And I've been using Photo Mechanic for a super long time. I believe Photo Mechanic 6 is the latest. But again, I rarely kind of upgrade this program only because I'm only using it just to select my images. So go ahead and click and drag over there. And right away, I'll double click over here, and I'm gonna just expand this for full screen. And I'm just using my keyboards. I'm using my keyboard. And let me see if I have, there's this other, I don't know if I can activate it real quick. I'm trying to find the program that I bought where you can see my keystrokes. But I'm not remembering what it's called. So let me see if I can find it real quick so that way you can just see. I'm gonna sort through date added, not type desk. All right, I'm probably gonna cut this out because I can't remember what that program was. But let me just find it. If I find it right away, great. If not, I will carry on. Man, not lapse. So I'm using cursor highlight right now. It's not type desk. Yeah, sorry about that. I thought I could find it, but I guess I can't. All right, so we'll just carry on. Sorry about that. All right, so what I do from here is I'm gonna go ahead and select, I usually have been flagging the ones that I just absolutely know they're not gonna make it. Basically, I'll delete it because it's just a waste of space. On the contrary, space right now is like affordable. It's always gonna be there. So some people actually don't delete any images. I've been deleting all my stuff, and only recently, just to be able to show my overall process, especially for the headshots, is that I'll keep it, because for me it's just more education fodder for me to use later on. But in this instance, I'm not going to really keep any of this, so I'll flag the ones with T, and you'll see here that it creates a check mark. So anything here I'm just framing, not going to use them. Maybe I can use this one. Okay. Flash didn't fire, so, and you can see here that this was a picture profile. It's super punchy, so I'm just going to delete that. Something more that I would use. Great, great. Close up. And I move the lighting here just to be able to adjust for my face. All right, so between these two, you'll see here that I kind of sat up more. Kind of like where I'm hunched slightly more. Adding my fake laughs. This one was a really bad fake laugh, so I'm going to delete that. Made myself laugh from there. I did this one just because, you know, try to make the cool, like, GQ-ish looking one, but I want to also show personality. That looks great. Lighting-wise, no. Neck is weird. Maybe. I look too cool. But I don't want to be pretentious. Just realized I'm turning off my fan. Hopefully that wasn't picking up this entire time. And I like that one. This one, maybe. All right, so at that point, I'll go ahead and close that out. And all I'm gonna do here is view and tag. Again, these are the things that I'm not gonna use. At this point, I'm just gonna delete them. Yep, delete all 9 photos. Cool, and then there we go. So I go back to all, and now what I'm gonna do here is I'm just gonna flag the ones that I absolutely like. Usually that's with a 5. 5 is in Lightroom. So I'll do 1, and my process here is I'll flag things red. And I'm not like an all in or nothing. It's like either you really absolutely like it, so it's like a 5-star, or you're not gonna use it at all. I know that in Lightroom and also in Photo Mechanic, you can use star like rating system, like 1, 2, 3, 4. Never understood it. It's just like you're either going to use it or not. So I don't know why there's like an in-between, at least again for me. So what I do in this second pass, so the first pass was deleting everything that you're not going to use. The second pass for me is to find the ones that I like. So in general, like. This looks kind of soft actually, but I'll keep this one. All right, so I'm just gonna now jump into Lightroom because I was about to just do the star rating systems over here, and anything that you do in Photo Mechanic will carry over to Lightroom. So let's go ahead and open, let's see here, back to desktop, and we're gonna open up the Lightroom catalog. So again, Post Haste, which is really great, it'll create your Lightroom catalog for you, at least for the name. I find it to be super helpful because, again, if you can template everything, that's what you want to do in order to be able to move as fast as possible. So I'm going to go ahead and drag this folder in here, importing it, and you'll see right away that it'll save everything that was red. So at this point, you can go ahead and do the color rating system. And now I'm going to go ahead and select with my stars. So 5 over here. I guess that's nicer, right? I look more approachable. So 5. And a little too cool for school here. Only thing that I like about this is that I did lower the camera so you can see my feet, whereas the first one, it's a little too short. So maybe I'll just star that. So now between all of these, I have, again, we can change the view. So now we're at, select all here. And now I have these 4. So the ones I absolutely will probably use is going to be this one. And I could probably do a quick comp, like put this head onto this. Might be a little bit tricky, or I can just go off of this one just to keep it simple. All right, so let's now jump into the edit. So now I'm in the edit module, and all I'm looking for again is just super basic here. Probably gonna raise up the exposure slight contrast because, you know, I'm wearing black. If I really wanted to, I could probably crop this and or do a background extension so that way I don't get this wall. I'm indifferent. Doing a self-portrait, of course, is always kind of tough to frame, so I'm just going to do a slight crop over here. And now I'm just going to bump up vibrancy to about like 5-ish, and then put back some saturation also around 5, before and after, right? Before, after. All right, so now I'm going to bring this into, let's see first here. There's a plugin that I use called Portrait Professional, so I'm going to go ahead and use that right now before I bring it into Photoshop. So if you have not heard of Portrait Professional, it's a really good plugin. I can actually, let's see here. Let me just bring this up. Honestly, on their website, they do a really bad job selling. I mean, showing the actual like results. I think they look way too Photoshop. They look way too airbrush. And I think the version on right now, see how it's, let's see, let's open it from here. So I'm gonna make this, I'm gonna bring this to PortraitPro Studio. And what's nice about it is that it's a plugin. So again, I'm moving from Lightroom now into Portrait Professional. And I think I'm on 17, by the way. Yep, 17. So again, software always changes, but if you find something that kind of works, I don't think you don't necessarily have to always upgrade. So for me, it's been working, but I can kind of show you real quick. I mean, let's just explore together real quick. What is new in version 23? Looks like they have some art effects. Again, it's a little campy. I'm not going to use it. This is always great. It's I have a Mac Studio, so it's M1, M2 chip support. Backlight lighting brush. Before, after. Okay. Stray hair removal. Ooh, this is kind of cool. I do a really bad job in photoshopping stray hairs, which are about, well, I don't think you're actually going to see because I don't have a light background, but that was cool. And that's it. So these are the new features in version 23. I don't know what's, again, the additions since 17 all the way up to 23. But again, I digress. So I'm in here. It'll find and recognize the face. I'm gonna select male for myself. And it's gonna go ahead and do its little thing. I've already created some presets in here where there's a default for my quote unquote standard. Now, if I went with maximum scope, and you can check that out, right? So it's very uncanny. So what I did with standard, and that's after already, this is before, after, before, after, before, after. So what I created as my standard preset in Portrait Professional is just, you know, shaving off like a little, right? In terms of our face shape. Most people, when I give them direction for a headshot, I'm like telling them to lean forward just to be able to get a square jawline, for example, a more flattering overall jawline, right? Or I'll tell them to go ahead and smize, like Tyra Banks is smizing. These are the ways to kind of just make a more intriguing portrait and more flattering portrait. And if and when that doesn't happen during the shoot, that is when I will use Photoshop, that I'll use plugins like this, right? But at the same time, I personally am very careful with just not doing too much to kind of change the face. My personal philosophy when it comes to, you know, editing and post is it should definitely be, you know, it should be enhanced, but it should still be recognizable. You don't want to make the person look so good that they look absolutely different. And when I say so good, of course, I am talking about the industry, quote unquote, industry standards of beauty. So I don't want you to be so pressured to kind of follow what that is. I'm personally just looking at enhancing, say, skin, like if there's a pimple, You know, like I got wrinkles, I got some bags underneath my eyes. So I'm gonna improve that. So on like my best day, and also if I had a makeup artist, right, I'm applying what I would know what a makeup artist would do, but obviously in post. So let's just go under controls. I can kind of show you how crazy this could be. Let's just say that I wanted, let me fit my face in here. I'll go back here. So I can make my face even more, again, quote unquote, head forward. So after, before, after, before. I mentioned about skin widening. So sometimes if people have a deer in the headlights look, I can go ahead and reduce that slightly, right? After, before, after. The reason why that I think smizing works in general is in terms of body language, we just want to make sure that the subject looks interested to the viewer. And one way we do that naturally is if you're agreeing with someone, you're usually saying, huh, like that's interesting. Like your eyes are squeezing because you're thinking, like you're agreeing. And so that is something that I do mention in the headshot clinic is how to pose people. And that really is one part of the answer, which is think of it like what that person just said, the viewer, what they said was interesting. You're like, oh yeah, that's interesting. So moving on over here, face shape, I'm not gonna touch it, but appearance at 10. Again, I can make myself skinnier from 10 to 11. Let's keep it at that. Now, the one thing that I like about the program is the skin smoothing. So right now, this is on, this is off, on, off. And what I like about it is if you did a not so great job with your main key light, as far as putting the light, making the light as soft as possible, if that was what was desired, you can actually improve it in post. And you can improve the specular highlights, right? So the shine that happens on skin, if the light source is either too bright or too far, you're gonna get a hot spot. So as long as there's data there that you didn't clip it, like it's not a fully white value, then you can kind of recover it. So right now it's at level 28. I can go ahead and bump this all the way up, but now it gets a little too sheen, right? The skin, it's a little too matte rather, right? So I'm gonna find that little middle ground where if you look at my cheek area and my nose, where I don't wanna completely dull it out. I wanna be able to have a little bit of it because that is the whole indicator that a light was used, right? So before and after. And you can see here that my current preset, it's very minimal. You can remove pores, like let me see how like that, if it's like 100%, I just look too much, like too much happened. So even for me, it's at a 0, right? Imperfections, let's see at 9, let's see what happens here. I can see here that this area is lighting up and it's not the best, you know, previously it was at 9, so we can leave it around roughly back there. So it does a good job, but it's not like the best job, you know, as opposed to going in Photoshop and fine tuning it yourself. So it's a really good way to just like fast track your way into an edit, right? Around the eyes, I'll do something else to improve that, but we'll keep it as it was. And at this point, before and after, let's fit this over here. I feel great. Return to plugin. It saves it as a TIFF file. It's kind of large, but it'll save it as a TIFF file. And now we're back in Lightroom and it's right here. And you can see here that it denotes it as _edit TIFF. Here's the original, edit. And what I did forget to do was, let me rename all these files. So highlight everything. I'm gonna go back into my Lightroom and let's grab the file here, copy paste that, command and then command. Function F2, I'm like looking at my keyboard. And original file name, yes, I always like to do that and then copy and paste minus the Lightroom. So I always have the date, who produced it, like is it 845, like for video typically, or is it J Costas Photography, headshot, self-portrait, and my name. So again, if I start to search, either it's headshot or self-portrait or whatever, it'll come up. All right, so now we're here, we'll go back to develop. Let's go filter into our selects. And yeah, we're good over here. I'm gonna now bring this into Photoshop, and I'm gonna fine tune this. Let's get back my application frame so we can just focus here. There we go. So there's a few things that I would probably, I mean, it would be great if I didn't have the seam on my vflat. I'm not too concerned about that because when I reveal the wide shot, which is something that I do want to use as well, I don't want it to look too different because the wide shot shows like the actual equipment. Now, if I wanted to though, what I'll do is Command J here, and then I'm going to go ahead and fix my eye bags. Right. Or actually, let's do a background extension. So what I've learned in here is the quickest thing for me is, let's do a square marquee, Command M. And I'm not an expert in Photoshop manipulation, so I'm gonna do what I think what I'm doing the best way possible. So I would select an area, and then I would do Command Content Aware Scale. And now you can, let's do that again. Image, edit, content aware scale. Shift, and then drag, so that way you're not enlarging everything, you're just doing it one way. So you can still see the seam there, that's fine. To me, that looks fine. I'm not gonna go too gung-ho. Again, this part here, I am just gonna edit, even though the wide shot is going to be there. And all I do here is I'll use the clone tool, or rather I'll use a patch tool, click and drag. And then because it's so close, I'm going to use the clone tool now. The yellow marker is messing me up here. That looks good to me. There's a seam like right over here, so let's go ahead and fix that. Again, I'm just using the patch tool. I'm doing a really dirty selection here. Click and drag, and then that's over. There's also a seam over here. So click and drag that. So all in all, like that looks good to me. Oh, I just realized what I did forget to show was how you can use Portrait Professional to change the lighting, which I always like in general, but it's fine. So I used to save all my files, like my PSD files. They just get super big, even if you save it as a large format, like the .psb. But I haven't done that lately. But again, just for like an education fodder now, I do save it. So I'm gonna make this a little bit easy from an organization perspective. Again, if you're doing this and you're gonna discard your Photoshop file later, you don't have to name or like rename your layers, especially if you know what you're doing. So in this case, I will just rename it. So I'm just gonna put here BG extension. And what I tend to do is every time I'm done with like one part of the edit, I'll just duplicate the layer. So Command J for me. And I see I have a hair fly, so I'm gonna put hair fly. Hair fly, flyaway. So same thing here, I'm gonna like use the clone tool, and I'm just gonna like put that out. Man, I'm getting old with all my gray hairs here. So I'm just getting a source right outside of it, and then doing that. I'll leave my grays. I'm just getting older. All right, so that looks good to me. And let's see here. Command J, I'll just put here jacket. Probably should have used a brush. So I'm just gonna like take that out. This little speck. Anything that like really stands out, I'll start to remove. There's a little thread over here. Put it there. All right, I guess this little spot. And what I usually do when it comes to editing, like if your eyes are getting too fatigued or too tired by looking at the same thing, you can press and hold the space bar, and that gives your hand tool, and then you can kind of shake it. When you shake it, sometimes a spot would jump out to you more. So that's something that I would usually do. That's fine. All right, so now let's go work on the eyes, okay? So jacket's there, Command J to copy eyes. And here's like something that I learned from a long time ago. It was like a conference that I attended definitely a decade ago. It was like a couple photographer, and it was like this one thing, this one Photoshop hack or like, technique to apply onto the under of the eyes, like your bags, that have stayed with me ever since. And I think I was either in high school or like early college. So about to show it to you after the sip. All right, so what you do is duplicate the eyes or make a layer for the eyes. Duplicate it twice because one eye is gonna be for the left, one's for the right. And if you ever mess up, you can always revert back to your eye layer. So I'm gonna start over here. Patch tool, select around the eye where it's dark. Sample that below or above. Anything that has like a smoother part of the skin, I'll do above. Yes, that looks weird, right? After Command D or deselect, that looks weird. So what I'm gonna do now is just lower the opacity of that layer by pressing a number on the keyboard. So that's anywhere between, I usually start at 30%. So that is after, before, after, before. Now, if I went around 50%, it's gonna get a little too clean, like a near perfect version of myself, right? If I had it my way. Obviously 100% you don't wanna do, 70% is still too much. So that's before, after. But roughly around like 50% is probably at the highest that I would go. That's 50%. It's still too high to be natural, so around 30. Okay, so 20 to 30% is like the sweet spot for me. When I'm happy with that with my left eye, right, this side of, I'll do Command E, that'll flatten it to the bottom layer. And I'm gonna do the same exact thing, Command J. Now I'm gonna work on my right eye. Come back over here. Looks weird, look like an alien because it's natural to have the eye bag, so 30%. Before, after. And even less, right? Because this is actually falling in the dark side of the face, in terms of light. So that's 20%. So that is before, after, before, after. So to me, that looks great. I think the only thing that's bugging me right now is, I guess my eyes are a little bit watery here. It's allergy season for me. So I'm happy with here. So now I'm gonna flatten this. And now we have our eyes, right? Now we have our layer that we fixed up here. Now when you flatten both layers onto your original eye layer, then now both eyes are applied to it. So before, after, before, after. I'm just gonna fix this part of my eye. So Command J, zoom up really closely. Sample this part here. I'm just gonna highlight. So see that? Subtle enough, but at least I removed that bright spot. And yeah, I feel great over on this image. Okay. The very, very last thing would be for me to, I'm gonna just Command E. The very, very last thing for me is to apply a high pass sharpen. So when you upload, it's gonna get compressed. So you just wanna make sure that it stays sharp. So I created this action, which is called a high pass sharpen. So what it does, it's gonna copy the layer. And if you want, what I tend to do is I'll select everything, Command J, Command E. So now I've copied everything. So sometimes if you're working with layers and you have a mask, you wanna make sure that all of your layers are selected. So just for safety, I select them all, copy everything, and I flatten it. So I can call this as a flatten. So what's gonna happen in this action is it's going to copy this layer, so layer via copy. And I already created, again, an action. So it'll apply a high pass filter, radius at 4. And then it's gonna make that top layer to become overlay. and then set that overlay layer to 40%. So I'm gonna go ahead and play it. It's gonna do the action. And now I have the flatten, now I have the high pass sharpen applied to this image. I'm gonna zoom in just to show you the before and after. That is after at 40%, before. After, before. So sometimes, I don't want my pores to be that sharp. So maybe like 20%. Super subtle. Okay. Oh, and see, this is what happens in real life editing. I kind of forgot to brighten my eyes. So let me do that real quick. So even though I already have it flattened, let's just delete it. Copy this and then brighten eyes. My main way of doing it is just using the dodge tool. It's like my very hacky way of doing it. And I'll brush that over. Brush over. So that's before, after, before, after. And so of course I don't want my skin to be brightened because when you use a dodge tool, everything gets brightened and not the most flattering. It's like the reds on my skin and the oranges get brighter and more saturated. So I'm not gonna apply it to there. So this is where you wanna set a mask. So I'm gonna go ahead and pressing Option and holding it, clicking it. So now I have a black mask on. So now anything that's white will be revealed. X to flip my colors because now I wanna make sure that I reveal. And now I'm just using the brush tool. So I'm gonna just only highlight, make this a little bit bigger here, the whites of my eye and then my pupil. Same thing over here. So that's before, after, before, after. My eyes a little red, like I mentioned, allergy season. Let's see if I can fix that real quick. My other hacky way of doing it is I'll do adjustment layer, hue, saturation, get my reds. And now I'm just focusing on my eye here. I'm gonna drag it down. And of course, I don't want the entire image to be affected. I'm on my mask layer and make this all black. Paint bucket tool, click, switch back to white, brush tool, and now I'm only gonna affect this part of my eye. You can back up a little bit, and you can see here the corner of my eye kind of messed up here, so maybe I'll revert back to it. So like that. Because again, you don't want, our eyes are definitely not gray. We're all gonna have blood vessels for sure. And you can see it looks a little bit gray, right? So that's after, before, after. But because it's just on a layer, you can go ahead and make it 50%. So all you're doing is just reducing the general redness of my eyes. And that's it. So I'm gonna go ahead and save this. And I just do JPEG. I'm gonna put this back into the edited folder. And because I'm doing this for myself, I can just delete these folders and keep it over here. Self-portrait, it's edited. I think I save around like 11. And then that looks good to me. If I'm gonna move on to another one, which is gonna be super minor, let me go back over here, or back to Lightroom, which is this one. So all I'm gonna do now is just I'm gonna match this. Because it's such a wide shot, I'm not gonna worry too much about it. But what you can do is select, the file that you edited, click this one, and then just gonna sync. And maybe I'll make it slightly brighter. And I feel like I'm happy with this. I'm just gonna export it. So hopefully this was a good episode for you guys. Thank you again for watching this. It's gonna be a long tutorial, but hopefully by now it's already shortened as much as possible to take out me finding out the keystroke app. So if there's any questions as far as my editing process, do leave them below. And yeah, hopefully this helps in your next portrait that you're editing. Cheers.